And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Flying weather showing not too bad of a start to the day Friday, with a lot of VFR over the interior down to the Gulf Coast here and the Panhandle. Marginal VFR up along the southern Kenai Peninsula, western Cook Inlet there to the Alaska Range, some IFR around Kodiak Island, marginal VFR up around the Arctic coast. Heading out to the Bering Sea, a big area of IFR with the storminess out there, spreading in toward Togiak Bay, western Bristol Bay, Alaska Peninsula, across the eastern Aleutians. And that area kind of breaks up here along the Alaska Peninsula there, mostly on the Pacific side now, with the main area up here over the eastern and northeast Bering Sea, right up across Nunivak Island, there along the southwest coast. Marginal for the Aleutians. Marginal VFR a little more extensive here for the Kenai Peninsula into western Prince William Sound and the western Susitna Valley, Cook Inlet area. Also up over the North Slope, Brooks Range, eastern Brooks Range, possibly some marginal VFR getting down to the Yukon River there, and staying VFR, central interior, here from the Bering Strait all the way down the southeast coast. And the VFR weather continues from Yakutat all the way down to Dixon Entrance on Saturday morning. IFR now up here along the Brooks Range and eastern Arctic coast areas. And again, some of that spilling south of the mountains there into the Koyukuk Valley, down to the Yukon River. IFR now showing up along the eastern slopes of the western Alaska Range, and also here Kenai Peninsula on up in toward the Portage Whittier area, maybe Valdez. Areas of IFR for Kodiak Island possible, and then IFR here, the big area still, eastern Bering Sea, Pribilofs, Nunivak Island, right up to the Yukon Kuskokwim Delta coast, and actually up into the southern Kuskokwim Valley. And moving on to the afternoon. IFR, not as big as it is in the morning here, but still into Togiak Bay, mostly along the coast there, Cape Newnham area, improving to marginal for the Pribilofs and Nunivak Island. Yukon Delta on up into the Kobuk Valley, marginal VFR, and IFR for the Brooks Range out to the eastern Arctic coast. Now just a narrow strip of IFR here along the coast range, back in toward, again, Whittier and Portage, possibly down to Resurrection Bay. Southeast coast, holding on to VFR as well as the central and eastern interior. And for passes, Anaktuvik, marginal VFR for the day Friday, and Adigan as well looking marginal. Lake Clark and Merrill, marginal VFR times for both passes there, especially on the eastern entrances. Lowest conditions for rainy also on the eastern entrance, marginal VFR. And for windy, holding on to some VFR flying there, hopefully. And Isabel, VFR. Ventesta, VFR. And Tanita, marginal VFR possible at times throughout the day on Friday. And for Portage, marginal VFR with possible IFR on the eastern entrance. And for Chilkoot and White, another VFR day coming up there. And for the freezing levels, about 2,000 to 4,000 feet here along the Alaska Peninsula to the eastern Aleutians. Otherwise, 4,000 to 6,000 feet over the southeast interior here, and closer to 6,000 feet over the southeastern Panhandle. Icing, looking at possible considerable moderate rime icing here, Cook Inlet in the Kenai Peninsula, also over the or along the Kilbrook, Buckland, Auckland mountain areas there, and Kodiak Island, light to isolated moderate icing, and that thread here covering much of the Yukon Kuskokwim Delta, St. Lawrence Island, and the northern Bering Sea. Jet stream, strongest winds at 33,000 feet south of the Aleutians, but 100 knots just clipping the Fox Islands there. Otherwise, kind of a broad southwest flow, 60 to 80 knots over the southern and eastern part of the state. Light under high pressure for the southeast coast. 9,000 feet here. Southeast winds, 60 knots right in across south central Alaska, diminishing to 40 knots up over the eastern interior. And 40 knot winds around this low here just off the southwest coast. And the strongest winds again along and just south of the eastern and central Aleutians. Taking a look at 3,000 feet, a couple of low centers out here over the Bering Sea. Easterlies 40 knots off the Yukon Delta coast. east-southeast 40 to 45 knots or so there. Kamishak Bay, Iliamna Lake area, and southeast 40 over the Gulf of Alaska, diminishing there as it makes landfall along the North Gulf Coast, and 50-knot westerlies for Adak and Atka. And from there, looking at turbulence. Possible moderate turbulence here, the Barren Islands, across Kamishak Bay into the greater Iliamna area, as well as around Montague Island there, southern Prince William Sound. And moderate turbulence pretty likely here for the eastern Aleutians, all the way out to Kiska Island. Smooth for the interior, eastern Arctic coast, all the way down across the Panhandle.